Making physical entry on a client site. Do you know the forensic evidence that you leave behind when you are manipulating a lock? In this video, we're going to talk about what that looks like for one particular attack, as well as why it's important to know this as a red teamer. Lock forensics. Why does it matter that we have an understanding of the type of marks that we leave inside of a lock when we are manipulating it as red teamers? Now, it's pretty obvious why it matters if you're doing this for espionage or for a government team and such stuff like that. But why does it matter for a commercial red teamer? And that is just so that you can be educated and you can educate your clients on these particular attacks, as well as if they're wanting you to emulate a particular threat actor, you want to know what evidence that threat actor will leave behind. So let's talk about a little bit of the tools that we use when we're doing some type of forensic work. Now, in the lab, what we do is we do attacks on locks, we take them apart and we analyze the locks so we know what those attacks look like, right? Whether we're using, in this case, in this video, we're going to be talking about rakes, or we're using a leashy, or we're using whatever, a cast and mold. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that we have a consistent process where we can take apart a lock and not introduce more forensic evidence into that lock. I use wooden plug followers. When I'm actually using a plug follower, I make sure it is a new plug follower. Now I've used this plug follower a few times for a few different locks. And since this is just a quick demo video, it doesn't really matter. But when I am baselining a lock, as well as when I am looking at a lock after we've done an attack, I will use a new wooden plug follower. I have wooden tweezers here. Makes it super simple. Do some work, but they're not going to leave a mark. And then I have a wooden toothpick as well. Again, this has helped me get springs out that might be stuck or point to things, as you'll see later in the video when I use this kind of as a pointer. And then I have my gloves, right? My McNally gloves, as some people might call them now. And I'll put those on right now with movie magic. I'm just like McNally now, right? Just 100% uglier and 1,000% more ginger. The attack that we want to use for this lock is going to be raking. So I have some pins here that are brand new. I have brass pins, I have a lab colored universal pin, and then I have nickel silver pins. And we're going to look at the markings of each of these. When we are attacking a lock, we want to attack it skillfully. Now, raking is not really a skillfully type of method of entry. There is some component to it that involves some level of skill, but it's really just a violent attack, right? You go in and you're just, I don't. You go in and you're just trying to rake the lock open, right? You're just angry at the lock. And then something, hopefully, opens up.
A few moments later.
So when we're taking apart a lock, right, there's a few ways that we can do it forensically. Picking the lock open is not forensically. The most common way to get a lock open is just use the key, right? If we don't have a working key, then we can use something like the quick decode keys. Link to a video of that somewhere up above. Or let's just say we don't want to do that. We could just take off this top cap right here. Just remove it gently, stick something underneath there, pry it off, and dump the springs and the pins in the correct order. Now, since we're already attacking this lock, I'm just going to, pick it open, which I already have done here, and start taking out the pins. So now that we have the lock taken apart, let's take a look at what these pins look like. Now, the pins that you will see in these clips are going to be from chambers 2 and 4 in every single lock. So I replace those with either brass pins, the lab universal pins, or the nickel silver pins. Here we have the brass pins after they've been raked. As you can see, there are many deep gashes and various orientations throughout these pins. The order is randomized, just like raking is. These pins are spinning in the plug. That's why we see the marks from all different angles. With these lab pins, what we have is again, deep gashes everywhere, and we have the coloring being removed. Now that coloring will be eventually removed with enough key uses, but the deep gashes with the coloring removed, we can tell that this lock has been attacked. And we can tell based off the orientation of the multiple deep gashes that it was done via raking. We have the nickel silver pins here. Now it still has deep gashes in there. They're just not as pronounced as they were with the lab universal pins or the brass pins. And that's just because it's a harder material. Though we are attacking it with steel, so it will leave marks. Steel is harder than this nickel silver material itself. And that's why we still have evidence that there were marks left. Now, if we take a look at the plug, we can actually see that there are a lot of metal shavings. And that is just from the damage that has been done from raking these locks over and over again, all over the keyway and the face of the plug. Taking a look inside the plug, we can see both machining marks, but then also deeper gashes that were caused by the rake itself. It is obvious that these marks are not just generic machining marks, but there are marks caused by physical manipulation attacks on that lock. And then if we take a look inside the chambers themselves, we can see on the other side, we can see these deep gashes that were made by the rake. It's fairly obvious that these are not just generic machining marks, that these are in fact foreign object tool marks. So we have the 3 pins all lined up by each other. So we have brass on the left, we have the lab universal pins, which are colored brass pins in the center, and then we have the nickel silver pins on the right. So as you can see, raking leaves a ton of forensic evidence that entry has been attempted in the lock, right? Now, we don't know just because that there's marks in there that entry was successfully made. We just know that there was foreign tools that were placed in the lock. Now, I'm not a forensic locksmith, but I did take some courses on the impact of your entry. And it was kind of like this, where we discuss these type of items, but in much more in depth and a ton more. And I'll be doing more videos like this on different types of attacks. But what we were trying to do in that class is learn how we can do signature reduction and better understand what it looks like when we are attacking a lock in the field. And that's what I want to do with this, is just give you a better idea of what it looks like when you do particular attacks against locks in the field, so you can talk to them about it with your client. Now you can go out and go get forensic locksmith training, become a forensic locksmith if that's what you want to do. And a lot of times what you're going to be working with is probably like insurance fraud claims. And then there are some folks that do forensic locksmithing work with the government. But a lot of forensic locksmith that I know, which I don't know a ton, I only know a few, a lot of them are doing like insurance claim stuff. When we are using this to our advantage as red teamers, why do we really care? Well, if we are trying to emulate a particular type of threat, those threats are going to have different stages of obviousness of entry being made. We have, the 4 stages. So we have overt entry, which is very obvious entry. We have covert entry, which can be determined with someone that has some training and doesn't need a ton of specialized tools. We have surreptitious entry, which requires specialized tools and specialized training to determine a possible method of entry. And then we have clandestine entry, which is no determinable entry method found after a forensic analysis of the lock was done. That doesn't mean that it's totally clean inside the lock. It just means that there is no forensically found items that could point to a deliberate method of entry on that lock. And that's what, everyone wants to strive towards, is clandestine method of entry. We'll settle for surreptitious and covert in the commercial world. But this just gives you a quick idea of what lock forensics, what it looks like when you are raking a lock, what you're doing to those pins, and the different types of marks it leaves on the different types of pins. Again, we had brass, the lab universal, and the nickel silver. And you'll find those pins everywhere, especially the nickel silver and the lab universal ones. You will find those in commercial installations everywhere. So pay particular attention to how those particular pins are, affected by marks. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a few of these videos dealing with different types of attacks, using a leashy tool, using some other tools that we can use to open up these locks, as well as looking at some of the marks that bypasses leave on locks as well. So if you found the video helpful, give it a like, subscribe, comment down below. Helps the algorithm, helps me, stay motivated to keep on producing content. I'm very motivated to produce content. I have tons of great videos coming up that I'm really excited for you all to see. But it, lets my wife know that I'm not just crazy posting out these videos online as well. The more interaction there is with the videos. With that, stay safe, stay sneaky, stay legal, keep hacking.